So last year, I was invited by Sitesville to give a talk for Hacking Ka Na Lang 2020. And it was there where I first introduced the concept of Web3 and how it can be secured with blockchain technology. Today, I shall give everyone here a refresher on this topic while diving deeper into self-sovereign identity as the up and coming web standard for digital identity. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Ronneil Petterson, but I prefer people to call me N for efficiency. And I lead and manage a technology consultancy firm called Tayo I Network. We specialize in researching and architecting fourth industrial revolution technologies such as AI, blockchain, cloud, and data, which are very well common as the ABCD of for IR. And we provide entrepreneurs a seamless product development experience with our network of agile teams and freelancers. We also aim to make the digital gig economy flourish here in the Philippines by helping individuals and teams to achieve their professional and business goals with our mentorship programs. You see, I have been working as a technology consultant and software engineer for various enterprises and startups in the past decade. And the culmination of my experiences has led me to start my own technology consultancy firm with some of the friends I met in the industry. So not only do we build platforms and products for clients, but we also help organizations and people understand the benefits and risks of the latest technologies. And we have been effectively doing so without having to market ourselves out there yet. Personally, I chose to specialize in the concepts of decentralization, distributed ledger technology, and blockchain because of all their potential to secure the latest generation of the internet, which is globally known as Web3. And this brings us closer to our topic for this afternoon. So you guys are probably thinking, wait, you mean to tell me there was a version 1 and a 2? So there is no concrete definition of Web3 because it encompasses all technological research and trends and advancements of the internet ever since it became interactive. Well, we can better understand it by knowing what Web 1 and Web 2 were like. So, in a nutshell, Web 1 was the start of the internet, and it can be compared to a library that anyone can access anywhere, but if and only if their computer has a dial-up connection. Now, Web 2 saw interactivity on the internet with the dawn of social media. It was at this generation where people did not need to learn how to code to publish content on the internet. And people basically relied on tech companies and the applications they developed to make their lives more convenient. Accessing the internet evolved from being a nice to have to becoming a birthright. Now, because of this newfound convenience and privilege, society started to become reliant on centralized services such as Google and Facebook. So Web3 is one of the major goals of many in the decentralization ecosystem. And it arose from the notion that the previous generations of the web and the internet protocols associated with them have served the world well and have amazingly transformed in just a couple of decades. But ultimately, as society's needs evolve, we basically outgrown these technologies. So when thinking about the benefits of Web3, you can pinpoint it to the fact that technologists and technopreneurs started to put their attention on personalizing and simplifying experiences for their users, hence making smarter applications. And this is one of the major benefits of Web3. It aims to provide a tailor-fitted experience for people by understanding what they need now based on their past behavior, language, and interactions on the internet. So Since the overall theme of Hacking Ka Na Lang is basically Valentine's, that's the reason why it's named that way. Uh, I just wanted to share a story just to better frame this for everyone here. So one of my partners in Tayo Network, whose name's Edward, wanted to surprise his girlfriend with a trip to Korea 2 years ago. And basically, he spent 2 months trying to plan out the entire thing. He had to find out his girlfriend's free schedule without her finding out what he was up to. He had to search the web for flight schedules that fit both their availability. He had to search for activities they could do during those dates. And he had to check the weather forecast for the days of their trip to see if it would affect any of his plans. And if it did, he had to update it himself, and so on and so forth. 2 months of anxiety, from uncertainty just to plan a surprise. But I am happy to say that all that effort was worth it because they were able to enjoy their entire trip without any problems. And even if they did have problems during the trip, well, this is not exactly the best place to talk about it. Now, put that story in the world of Web3, and you still get that same happy romantic outcome. But this time, Edward did not need to have 2 months of anxiety for the preparation. Heck, with Web3 technologies, Edward would only need 2 to 3 days to set the entire thing up. An app using Web3 technology would have suggested, reserved, and paid for flights on his behalf. Another app could have done the same thing, but this time for activities in Korea that fit both Edward's and his girlfriend's interest. So let's say they both happen to like samgyeopsal. The app books them to a samgyeopsal place in Korea that fits their eating budget. Now, let's also say they both watch the K-drama series Startup on Netflix. So now this other Web3 app would suggest them to visit places in Korea where the scenes were shot so they could recreate their favorite scenes together. Another Web3 app would have incentivized the both of them, possibly in the form of cryptocurrency, for sharing their tourist experience during their stay in Korea. So not only can Web3 achieve the same ending for Edward's story, but it would have taken less than 2 months for Edward to be romantic and plan the entire surprise. Not to mention, their entire experience was improved by personalizing these activities specifically for the both of them. So you guys are probably thinking, why aren't we there yet? Or where can I find these apps? Or how can I contact Edward after this talk so I can ask him about it? Now, unfortunately, there are always caveats to new technologies. You see, there are only two kinds of people who call their customers as users. One are people who work in the tech industry, and two are basically drug dealers. Now, a lot of technology companies, most of which belong in big tech, know how to utilize technology in a way that has become unhealthy for individuals and society at large. Entities such as Google, Facebook, and Microsoft, well, they're not really the bad guys here, and I believe they are trying to build impactful technologies. However, these businesses essentially started to treat people as products. So the approach they are doing with their technology has become exploitative. And this exploitation they are doing passes off as a negative externality rather than being their actual goal. So these businesses created their own identity profiling to serve their own business models because there was no global standard on digital identities that businesses can follow and use for their online services. This ultimately turned us into product by these businesses. And they do this by collecting our personal information, communications, and tracking all activities that we do online wherever they can. And then they increase the value of us as a product and improve the ability for them to sell us as a product by making us addicted to their own applications. So just a bit of an interaction with everyone here. I would like you to use Zoom's reactions on the bottom and show me a thumbs up if you have seen this page before on Facebook. I'll give you guys some time to find that thumbs up button. Okay, so the mere fact that I cannot see anyone here putting their thumbs up basically just means most of you guys are seeing this page for the first time. Heck, I first saw this page when I was preparing for this talk. Now, who here does not read the privacy policy and terms and conditions when signing up for an application, just like how normal people would? Show me your thumbs up. Okay. Now, who here, or is there someone here who is not a normal person and actually takes the time to read all of that? See, I wouldn't think so. You see, we are all aware that people will not actually read through all of that. And tech companies also know this. Here's another example. This is the sign up form of Facebook. Now, you see, before, people would need to explicitly accept the application's terms and conditions by ticking a checkbox on this form. But if you look closely at the sign up form, it now just assumes that when you click the big sign up button, you automatically agree to their terms. This is exactly why it is easy for these companies to get away with selling or sharing your data with third parties. Personally, I would be okay to have third parties analyze my data for business gain, just as long as that gain also makes their services more convenient and personalized for me. But no, you get news of data breaches happening to various organizations all over the world. And it does not matter if they are high profile or low profile. See, in 2020 alone, a report from Risk-Based Security revealed that the number of breach records has increased to an all-time high of 37 billion records, compared to the reported 15.1 billion records in 2019. So that basically means it doubled in just 1 year. And looking at the trend of yearly number of breach records, it is getting worse more than it is trying to get better. Now, the concepts of data privacy and security were supposed to work hand in hand to ensure that user information is protected from unauthorized access. So, with all of this happening, how can we really say that we own the data that we produce? In this current setup, we really cannot say that we do. You see, if data ownership was food, then access would be the main ingredient. But full control is the flavor that users should expect to taste, meaning your data ownership is strong if it is easy for you to find out who has access to your data and that you can intentionally share and restrict access to others in a straightforward way. And that data ownership, privacy, and security basically all revolve around the concept of trust. So there must be a means to ensure trust with technology. Now, there is no better way to describe the solution to this problem than hearing it from the inventor of the internet himself. You see, Mr. Tim Berners-Lee started a project called Solid back in 2017. And while describing the goals of this project, this is what he had to say about how the future of the internet should be like. So, and he said, and I quote, Solid basically aims to radically change the way web applications work today, resulting in true data ownership, as well as improved privacy by developing a platform for linked data applications that are completely decentralized and fully under the user's control rather than controlled by other entities. So this is where blockchain technology comes in. Now, Bitcoin, being the first ever use case for blockchain technology, launched in 2008. And it recently reached an all-time high of $55,000 for its price. And to think just last year was only worth $8,000 per Bitcoin. So even if blockchain is still considered as a nascent technology, every day more and more blockchain platforms, networks, and tokens are coming out with their own use case and innovation. And it will basically continue to innovate until eventually it reaches mainstream adoption, the same way that happened for the internet. But what exactly is blockchain technology? To give you guys a concise definition, it is a distributed and immutable list of records, otherwise known as a ledger, that is composed of blocks that are cryptographically linked together. Immutability essentially means that it cannot be changed, and the immutable nature of blockchain is the main reason why it can ensure the integrity of data. Now, how does that work exactly? You see, blockchain is composed of three technologies that have been around even before the internet was born. So first, you have database systems. And that's because blockchain, in essence, is a way to store data. And some blockchain platforms can be configured to set your own structure for the data you'll be storing, such as BigChainDB. Second is cryptography. That's because all records are grouped into blocks, then encrypted together with a reference to the previous block to form a hash. And because of this hash, it is computationally easy and fast to verify if a record exists in a blockchain or not. And just to dive deeper into how cryptography is used. So each blockchain account has two keys, public key and a private key. Now, the public key can be generated from the private key, but never the other way around. So data is encrypted with one, and it can only be decrypted with the other. And this is called asymmetric encryption. Most of the time in blockchain systems, the public key is used to encrypt information, and the private key is used to decrypt it. That's why it is a common saying that to always keep your private keys private. And this is exactly the reason why it is nearly impossible to hack into a blockchain and maliciously change a record. Because for someone to achieve this, they first need to find out which block contains the record that they want to change. And they can only do this by decrypting all blocks from block 0, otherwise known as the Genesis block, to the target block, which would take them years to decrypt. But let's say these hackers are rich and have quantum computers, so decrypting the blocks will basically take them less amount of years. So once they found the record that they want to change, they now need to have the private key of the blockchain account they are targeting to just even see the record. Now, we have the third technology, which is peer-to-peer networking. And blockchain makes use of this with how they validate and distribute data stored in the chain. You see, a blockchain network is composed of multiple computers called nodes that all have a copy of the entire ledger. And they all follow the network protocols so they can validate each other's copy of the ledger. And they basically ensure that any invalid or compromised nodes are corrected or disconnected. And they are able to do this because of the consensus algorithms that the network follows, which ensure that at least 50% of the network agrees that an incoming transaction is valid. And once the majority agrees of the transaction's validity, that's when they start telling everyone in the network to update their own copies of the ledger. And because of this, blockchain is perfect for use cases that require a single source of truth. And since it is technically just a way to securely store data, it can be used in any industry use case. Now, these are just a few of the examples where blockchain provides great benefit for cybersecurity. But what we'll be focusing on here is self-sovereign identity, because this is what's going to help us solve the risks of Web3 that I shared earlier. Now, so SSI, or self-sovereign identity, is essentially the principle that we should have full control of our identity. And to better understand this, we have to compare this construct to the other identity constructs that we have today. So the most conventional identity construct that is common in businesses and applications are the siloed identities. And this is when a service stores your information on their database. Now, one of the drawbacks of siloed identities is that people need to keep track of their usernames and passwords that they set for each service. That and the fact that the more accounts you have with different services, the more likely it is for one of those accounts to be compromised. So businesses start out with using this identity construct because it is easy to implement and it allows them to gather data about their users. But more and more companies are beginning to see that the more user information they hold, the more likely they are to be targeted for a cyber attack. And this is why businesses now prefer to use a person's identity from a different service instead. And this brings us to the next identity construct being used today, which is called federated identity. So to better understand this, this is when you see online services that let you sign up and log in using your Facebook or Google account. And this kind of identity solution is inarguably convenient for users and online services. However, the problem lies in trusting the identity provider in this scenario. So to give you guys an example, let's say you use your Facebook account to log into most of your applications. Then all of a sudden, a change in Facebook's terms of service decided to impose a geographical restriction of its use in the Philippines. So, basically, let's say the Facebook just got tired of all the social media propaganda happening here in the Philippines. And when this happens, you will suddenly find yourself locked out from your linked accounts. And this is not just a ludicrous example, because this kind of censorship has actually happened, and quite recently, as a matter of fact. This month alone, in February, in Australia, because of a recently proposed legislation that would enforce tech platforms to pay news publishers for content, Facebook decided to block Australian users from sharing and viewing news from local and international outlets. And this kind of censorship only really happens with centralized systems. And this is what self-sovereign identity is trying to solve. So the world of Web3 uses the centralized identity to take back control and give it to the people, and basically enable us to create our own blockchain-based identities. How this works is that you have three actors in SSI. First is the identity owner, which is basically us. Second is the identity issuer, who are authority bodies that provide people with identity credentials. Examples of identity issuers would be, say, DFA for passports and LTO for driver's license. Now, the third actors are called identity verifiers. These are organizations or people who need to check your identity credentials. Using the same examples I mentioned earlier, examples of identity verifiers would be, say, immigration in airports for your passport, and traffic enforcers or the MMDA for driver's licenses. So every time you are issued an identity credential, like a driver's license, this will be pegged on the blockchain with the identity issuer signature and assigned to your account. This way, if let's say a traffic enforcer needs to verify your driver's license, they only need to scan a QR code on your SSI app, and they would be able to verify if you really have a driver's license or not. Once they have scanned your SSI QR code and see that you do have a driver's license issued to you by LTO, then they would also be able to issue you already a traffic violation ticket signed by MMDA and is automatically stored on your SSI. And the best part about this scenario, you did not need to show an ID card that has your personal information such as your name, address, and birthday. And basically, the enforcer did not have to physically write a ticket and hand it over to you. And basically, leave it up to you on when you're going to process that traffic violation ticket. So, because in this interaction, none of those information is actually needed. What the traffic enforcer only needed to know was if you are licensed to drive a car or not. And this is called zero knowledge proof for identity verification. Now, there are already a lot of companies who are trying to develop SSI platforms. One example is Uport, which is built on top of Ethereum. Another is Cirrus ID by Proxima X. So, to put it simply, you can think of an SSI app as a personal data locker for people to encrypt their information and share it in situations where they can do so intentionally and specifically. In the case of being pulled over in traffic, if the enforcer needs to know any of your personal information, you are able to share it granularly. So if they want to know the name of the person who is driving your car, they would have to request that specific information from the enforcer. And basically,
Hello, N.
hello?
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, seem to have lost you guys for a moment.
Okay, okay.
Okay, give me time to share my screen again. Okay, can you guys see my slides again?
Yep, sir.
Okay, perfect. So going back, yeah. So if they wanted to know the name on your driver's license, then they would have to request that specifically from your SSI, and you would have to intentionally share it. They won't be able to force you if you do not allow it. Now, if you put this user-centric approach to interacting online together with the fact that a lot of open platforms for various industries such as health, music, and government are constantly being developed, then we will have this network of business models where different people and organizations can have different roles on these platforms. And we can all use these platforms without any single entity controlling or benefiting from this scenario. And basically, that is the decentralized vision of the world of Web3. Now, to put it all into a conclusion, uh, SSI applications ensure you have full control of your digital identity. Blockchain provides SSI with a means to secure a network of encrypted identities and data by using public key infrastructures and consensus algorithms. Trust, um, yeah, both AI and blockchain introduce new paradigms that give us a glimpse of what the future of the internet can be. And it looks like it's decentralized. And once again, I'm Ann Petterson from Taiwan Network, and I thank everyone here for listening to my talk, and I thank Sitesville for inviting me for a second time around. I hope I have sparked the curiosity of most here, and should anyone want to get in touch with us in Taiwan Network, feel free to send me an email and connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter. Also, I would like to hear your feedback about this talk, and you guys may do so by scanning the QR code on the left. Providing your feedback also gives you the chance to be part of our growing network of technologists and mentors.